Hi, Aviva. How are you doing?
I am good. I think the recording has started,
It
so I don't know if
has.
you want this part recorded, but
Yeah, it's auto
okay.
recording, so
Okay.
yeah. Sounds like your mic's working fine, your speaker's working fine.
Yep.
Can you try screen sharing? If you, I mean, do you have any
I have slides. Uh I'm not quite ready to share them,
Okay.
but I
Yeah,
can
when
I
you
can
are
share
ready.
I can share just share my screen one moment.
Yeah. I mean, make sure nothing's sensitive up, but I just want to make
Yeah.
sure everyone is able to share screen. Hi, Lillian. Hi, Jessica. How you doing?
Can
Hello.
you s- can you see my screen?
I am not seeing your screen right now. Maybe they can.
I can see.
Yes.
I'm sharing just a title slide right now. Yeah, what are you sharing, Aviva?
I'm sharing a Zoom. What do you see?
Yeah, I'm just seeing my screen right
Oh,
now.
at the top, you should be able to toggle between screens. So at the very top of my Zoom window, I have the option to see Aviva's screen or Matthew's screen.
Okay, great. As long as you can see it, I think we're good.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
but
gonna
I guess
stop
the
sharing.
question is, what does everyone else see?
Yeah. Uh,
Maybe we should only share one at a time because I'm not sure how that works.
yeah, let's try to stick to one at a time. Um, okay. Jessica, so it sounds like your mic's working fine. Sounds like your speaker's working fine. Do you have any slides you want to share?
Yeah, I have slides.
Okay. Can you just, I mean, make sure that you're able to share? Maybe this is unnecessary, but just want
Yeah,
to make
no,
sure
it's
you
all
don't
right.
have any hang-ups once things get going.
Let me just pull them up. And I apologies for just sharing these earlier today, but you can see my screen, right? I'm not
It's
in
Yes.
full
okay.
screen mode, but
I'm gonna stop sharing on my end. May that allow me to see. Yep. Okay. Now I see. Yep. Yeah, I see your slides. So we're good.
okay.
Um, and I don't know if it matters, but I was able to see bookmarks and other tabs you got open. So
Yeah, because I wasn't in full screen share.
um, okay. So I think we're good there. Uh, Lillian, can you speak? Can I hear you all right?
I think so.
I can hear you fine. Good, good, good. And then do you have any slides you want to share or?
Yes, let me see if I can share. Um, can you
Great.
see?
Yep, I can see it just fine.
Okay.
So we're good. So we're waiting on the interpreters and we're waiting on the folks from Framingham Public Schools and from Keefe Tech. So thank you all for showing up a little bit early. I think until more people show up, I'm just going to go off video. Yeah, or encourage you all to do
And
so.
can I just double check, Aviva? By the way, we were both in the IMCO meeting earlier today, but I didn't think it was the best time to touch base with you about this.
We're
But I was
being
told,
recorded right now. I just want to
Yeah,
thank you.
acknowledge. Yeah.
that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, no, not a substantive question,
Okay.
just a panel planning question. So you're
Yeah.
planning to cover the basic KYR information, right?
I am. I am. I have 20 minutes, so I'm trying to cover that and also family preparedness and also so it's going to be quick.
An
Um,
abbreviated version. Okay.
yeah.
Well, because I was asked, and Matthew, correct me if I'm wrong, but to cover more of kind of like the organizing advocacy perspective, like how people can get involved now. And I
Exactly.
suspect that we will have a mix of folks that might be directly impacted and folks that are allies and advocates. And so I'm just going to speak broadly to all of them. Okay, great.
Yeah, I'm going to be sharing a lot of Miro resources. So,
Wonderful.
yeah.
I worked hard on those, so I'm glad.
Yes. Um,
And I received a first question. Turns out one of our attendees is actually Jesse Edwards, who's going to be speaking a little bit. So let me just test. Let's see if this actually is visible. So do you guys see a question from him yet in your
I see the
Q&A?
question from Latoya Edwards
Okay, so you
that is
do see
signed
it.
Jesse Edwards. Yeah. So
And
we're
everyone,
already, so we're not in a practice session. We're already in the webinar, so folks
we
can
are in the
join.
webinar. Yep.
Okay, got it.
Let
So
me actually
early birds can
contact
be here.
him. Yep. Let me. I'm going to contact him and get him in here because he needs to be a panelist as well.
I'm just going to
Um,
go on mute and off camera until we're ready.
okay. And hi, John Evans. Could we test out your mic? Make sure you can hear me just fine, and then
Sure. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
can hear you great.
Very good.
Um, and then do you? I think I remember you saying you didn't have any slides. Is that
Nope.
still the case? Okay, great. So we don't need to worry about you screen sharing.
Nope.
Okay, so I think we're good for right now. I'm gonna try to get in contact with Jesse Edwards here, make sure he can get in. Hi, Jesse, are you there?
Hello,
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing?
Good. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I didn't make the connection, the Edwards last name connection there.
Yeah, no problem.
So it sounds like your mic's working fine, your speaker's working fine. Do you have any, you have some slides, right? So can we make
Me?
sure you're able to present okay?
Yeah. Me slides? No, I have no slides.
Oh, you don't have slides. Okay,
No.
great. In that case, I'll probably be showing my slides while you're talking then.
Okay.
It's just like title screen, how to listen in on interpreter functionality, and then what the agenda is. So,
Okay.
and did you see my response to you earlier?
I did, and I can. I'll text you my number now.
Okay, great. No, we are being recorded right now.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to allow Robert Tremblay in as a panelist. And Jesse, we're just going to go straight from you into Metro West Legal. Um,
Yeah, I got that. Yep.
okay, great. Hi, Robert. Can we test out your mic, video, speakers when you get a chance?
Sure. Can
Mic's
you hear me all
working.
right? Good
Yep,
afternoon, evening, everyone.
yep. I can
Volume
see
okay?
you. Can hear you just fine. Yep, volume's great. And you don't have any slides, correct?
I do not.
Okay, great. So we don't need to test screen sharing.
Hey, Jesse.
Hey, how you doing, Dr. Tremble?
Nice to see you. Please call me Bob.
Okay. Sorry, force of habit.
Sorry, I'm gonna keep reminding you. No problem.
I
Good
know.
to see you all.
Good to see you as well. Reminder that we are recording right now. I think we got everyone except the two interpreters at this point, so doing pretty well here.
Now, the interpreters, they will be just interpreting the questions at the end, or as we're talking.
Uh, we were testing out new functionality. They're going to be interpreting live while people are speaking. So people are going to be able to hit the interpretation button on the bottom and choose which language they want to hear in.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, sort of an experiment. So we'll see how this goes.
Matt, did one of the referrals that I gave you work out?
Uh, no, we sadly don't have any budget to work with, so we
Right.
weren't able to
But
go
you
for
found
full time.
folks.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. We found someone through FPS actually, so thank you for help with that. We have a hand raised. Let me see if I can. Hi, Bob. How are you doing? It looks like you're still mute.
I was just going to say, I didn't know whether we were going to be on the screen or not because at any given time, any of the commissioners.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we. Yeah, I think as long as you're a panelist, you're going to show up on the screen here. I think that's how it works. Although, no, you're an attendee. So yeah, I think let's just have video for the people who are going to be presenting.
Sure.
Okay. So I think at this point we're just waiting for interpreters to show up so that we can test out that functionality.
Matt, did you get my text?
Oh, let me take a look. And does everyone have my phone number? I'm not going to say it on this because folks have been posting these to Framingham Unfiltered. But I think I emailed it out to everyone. Yep, I got your message, Jesse. So thank you.
Yep.
Does anyone have any questions or concerns at this point?
You're doing a great job, Matt. I got to tell you, you really have.
Well, we'll see how it goes. Tell me that at the end.
Well, you got a great cast, so they can't go wrong. That's for sure. You
Yeah,
know,
we got a good group of people here, some caring folks who want to help out.
right?
That goes a long way. Yeah, and thank you all for agreeing to do this. This is a big deal. Hoping there's gonna be a good turnout. If there isn't, it'll still be published to YouTube and to the Framingham city government page, so that other folks can take a look at it later.
Matt, how do the general public get to ask a question? Is it the same way?
Yeah, there's a little Q&A button. I'm gonna display this right off the bat for folks. We got about a minute left here till we get going.
Matthew, just remember to turn on the translation feature again, because I'm not seeing my room for Portuguese.
Yep. I'm going to do that after we describe to folks how to connect to
Okay.
them. Because, yeah, we need you to say that on the main feed.
Oh, okay.
That
Got
everyone
it.
hears it, right?
Got it. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, 7 o'clock. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. My name is Matt Brown. I'm a member of the Framingham Human Relations Commission that coordinated this event. This is the Immigrant Rights and Resources Night, presented by the Framingham Human Relations Commission. To start, I want to explain to everyone how to set up interpretation. We have interpreter functionality in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. You want to click on the interpretation button, you want to select Spanish or Portuguese, and then you can choose to mute original audio. Renan, can you explain that again in Portuguese?
Sim. Na parte de português, se tem alguém aqui que precisa de tradução, nós vamos habilitar daqui a pouco o botão de interpretação, onde você vai poder selecionar espanhol ou português. Opcional, você tem como clicar com o áudio para silenciar o áudio original e para ouvir apenas o intérprete. A gente recomenda isso porque daí é melhor para você ouvir direitinho o português e não ficar com aquelas duas vozes falando ao mesmo tempo.
And Mauricio, can you repeat that in Spanish for me?
Sí, buenas noches y bienvenidos a la Comisión de Relaciones Humanas de Framingham que organiza este evento. Y si ustedes desean oír esta interpretación en español, abajo en su pantalla van a encontrar un globo. Cuando entren el globo les va a pedir qué idioma quieren escuchar, escojan español y yo con todo gusto voy a ser su intérprete esta noche. Gracias.
All right, and now I'm going to set up that feature. So right on, I'm setting for Portuguese, and Mauricio, I'm setting for English to Spanish, and those are up and running. Okay. Hopefully folks are able to connect to that now that they've heard the explanation. So a couple other things. Thank you for joining us tonight. This event has been a long time in the making. Grateful to see our community come together and support and protect each other right now. With that, I'd like to hand things off to Jesse Edwards, the city's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer, to kick us off.
Thank you, Matthew. Good evening and welcome. My name is Jesse Edwards, and I'm the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the City of Framingham. Thank you for joining us this evening for this important webinar focused on immigrant rights, safety, and community support. I want to thank the city's Human Relations Committee for hosting this event and assembling this esteemed board of presenters. Tonight's session is part of the city's ongoing commitment to ensure that every member of our community feels informed, protected, and valued, regardless of immigration status. My office has received a number of phone calls from concerned citizens about immigration and customs enforcement and the increased number of people in our immediate community apprehended by federal agents. People are scared, concerned, and in some cases angry, and they want answers. Although this webinar will not speak to specific incidents or specific cases, it is an opportunity to learn more about what community supports exist and how to access them. We recognize that the current climate can be uncertain and stressful for many of Framingham's immigrant families. The goal of this webinar is to provide accurate information, practical guidance, and supportive resources that can help residents navigate these challenges with confidence. This is a safe and inclusive space where your questions and concerns are welcome. Tonight's webinar will be moderated by Matthew Brown, member of Framingham's Human Relations Commission, and will include presentations from key partners and experts in legal support, education, community services, and advocacy. After the presentations, we'll open it up for Q&A sessions where all speakers will be available to respond to your questions. Interpretation is available in Spanish and in Portuguese throughout these sessions. You are welcome to ask your questions in any of those languages, and our interpreters will assist. We'll begin with Aviva Schaefer from Metro West Legal Services, who will talk about your immediate legal rights, ICE interactions, family preparedness, and legal planning. Then we'll hear from Lillian Costa of Brace about community-based support services available to immigrants. Next, Jessica Koki from MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition, who will share how we can empower and advocate for immigrant communities. And finally, Dr. Robert Trenley from Framingham Public Schools and Dr. Jonathan Evans from Keith Tech will speak jointly on student safety, mental health, and immigration enforcement near schools. After all speakers present, we'll move into our Q&A segment, where we'll take your questions. And I'll return at the end to offer some closing remarks and reflections and next steps. This video will be uploaded to the City of Framingham's YouTube channel so anyone can view its contents when it is convenient to them. With that said, let's get started. I am pleased to introduce Aviva Schaefer from Metro West Legal Services. Thank you, and I will see you at the end.
Hi, my name is Aviva Schaefer. I supervise the immigration unit at Metro West Legal Services. I've included on this first page my name, the name of my organization, and also our main phone number. That number is also going to be later in the presentation. So if you don't catch it now, you will be able to catch it later. So what is Metro West Legal Services? We are a nonprofit. We're located in Framingham, and we provide free civil legal aid, including advice and direct representation to low-income individuals living in our service area, which includes Framingham, but also several other towns in and around Framingham. So we do a lot besides immigration. We do housing, eviction defense, family law, benefits law, special education law, elder law, and immigration law. Today I'm only going to be talking about immigration law, but I think it's important that you know about the other things we do in case you need help with those types of things. It's the same number to call. So I'm going to start out with just talking about what is immigration enforcement, what kinds of places are places where immigration enforcement happens, and who does immigration try to detain. So, what is immigration enforcement? Immigration enforcement is often carried out by ICE, which is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But now we're also seeing immigration enforcement carried out by other federal partners of ICE, which can include other federal agencies like the DEA or the ATF. There are several different organizations that are helping ICE with immigration enforcement. ICE looks for several different types of people. People who came to the United States without permission, people who stayed in the United States longer than the government said that they could, people who have an immigration status but have been accused of a crime, and people who have deportation orders already. Even if ICE is looking for these types of individuals, ICE may also interact with other people, including citizens, permanent residents, or immigrants who ICE isn't really looking for, but may be happy to come across. On this page, you can see a couple different places where ICE does enforcement operations. One is an apartment building or house. Another is a courthouse. Another is a car, so like a car stop. And another is a workplace. These are common places where ICE does enforcement, but there are other places that may be less common where ICE may also go to look for somebody, like a school, a church, or a hospital. So now I'm going to shift to talking a little bit about rights. I want to preface this a little bit by just saying I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. So if you have an immigration case or another type of case, talk to your attorney and get advice from them specifically. I'm giving general information that anybody can have as information, but this is not creating a relationship between me and you as your attorney, because I'm not your attorney. And I'm here to share information. I think it's really important to share information right now when there's a lot of fear in the community. Information is the gives people power. And all
Aviva,
right.
a quick
Yep.
quick thing from Tracy Bryant. She asks that you say what DTA and the other mention stands for.
Oh, DEA is the Drug Enforcement Agency. ATF, I believe, does firearms types of enforcement. They're just other kinds of federal agencies that sometimes help ICE with ICE operations, even if the operation doesn't really involve drugs or firearms, because has asked, or the government has given permission to these agencies to help ICE with ICE's job. So back to knowing your rights. Everybody in the United States has certain rights, and some of those rights are constitutional rights. I'm going to, oh, I think I'm going in the wrong direction. One moment. So there are a couple things to keep in mind when exercising your rights. The first one is exercising your rights may not prevent you from being detained, but it may make it possible to challenge the detention later on. So that's an important thing to know because just because you have rights doesn't mean your rights will always be respected. It means that if your rights are not respected, there may be something that you can do about it later. Another important thing to consider is safety. Even though you have rights, it's also important to think about how can I make sure that I'm safe in this situation? So here are some rights that I want to talk about. The first one is the right to remain silent and not answer questions. Everyone has this right all the time. So this right means that if law enforcement is asking questions to somebody, that person does not need to answer and can exercise their right to remain silent. They also have the right to not line up by immigration status. So if law enforcement says all the immigrants go over here and all the people who are not immigrants go over here, people do not need to line up. If an officer says that somebody is free to go, so for example, if someone is out in the community and ICE interacts with that person or stops that person can say, "Am I free to go?" before any other questions get asked or answered. And if ICE says the person is free to go, the person has the right to go, but should do so calmly and peacefully. It's important to know with the right to go peacefully that's if an officer says that someone is free to go. If an officer says someone is not free to go, they do not have that right. People also have a right to not sign papers. So it's really important to read papers before signing them in all situations, but especially when interacting with immigration. It's really important to read the paper, understand the paper, maybe talk to a lawyer before signing any papers. But everyone has a right to not sign papers. In someone's home, they have a right to not open the door and to ask to see a judicial warrant slipped under the door or shown through a window. And then the last right that I want to talk briefly about is the right to not be subject to unreasonable search and seizure. So unreasonable is an important word in there, but that's an important right. So if ICE comes to someone's home, that person's home is their private space. And so no one gets to go into your house without your permission or a warrant signed by a judge. ICE will see opening the door as permission. So even if you aren't giving your verbal permission, if you open the door, that may be seen as permission. So that's why it's important to ask for that warrant to be slipped underneath the door or shown through a window. Um, ICE can come to your house without your permission and enter if they have a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant would say U.S. District Court on it. It would be signed by a judge, and it would say some information about where they're looking and what they're looking for. So now I'm going to shift to if ICE stops somebody in public. If ICE stops somebody in public, there are kind of two situations here. There's a situation where they may already have information about that person, or there's a situation where they may not have information about that person and maybe they're looking for somebody else. If they have information about the person, they may have enough information to arrest them without looking for more information from the person. However, if they're not looking for that person in particular, they may be trying to gather information to determine if they can make an arrest. So it's really important to remember these things. If stopped by immigration, if stopped by the police, if stopped in general, do not run away. Do not move suddenly. Stay calm. Do not speak or act disrespectfully. Use a respectful tone of voice and body language that will help set the stage for as safe as possible interaction. Think about exercising your rights and what types of rights you want to exercise, including the right to remain silent. Do not lie about anything. That's really, really important. Lying makes the situation worse for everybody involved. And do not say, someone who's not a U.S. citizen should not say that they are a U.S. citizen, and they should not say that they are Puerto Rican if they are not a U.S. citizen or they are not Puerto Rican. That's really, really important. Things that you can ask if you get stopped are, am I free to go? If the answer is yes, you can say thank you and go calmly. It's really important to not lie. If stopped, you are not obligated to share information about immigration status, country of citizenship, or criminal history. Remember, you have the right to remain silent. People who drive, it's really important that they have a driver's license. That's what the law says. If you drive, you have to have a driver's license. That's an important thing to keep in mind. It's also important to think about what types of documents you want to have with you and what types of documents are better left safe at home. If you or somebody is getting detained, some important questions to ask are, can I call my lawyer? Can I call my friend to let them know what's happening? Or can I call my family member to let them know what's happening? If someone is being detained, it's also important to tell officers about any urgent or important medical needs that they have and other needs like I was on my way to pick up my child from school and I need to make sure that somebody picks them up. These are important pieces of information to give to officers so that they can allow you to make a phone call to make sure that those important things are taken care of or to make sure that you have what you need if you are being detained. So I want to talk a little bit about documents to carry. So many non-citizens have a right to have an immigration judge decide if they should be deported before they are deported. However, there's this thing called expedited removal, which is a fast track to deportation without seeing an immigration judge. One group of people that is potentially subject to this expedited removal is non-citizens who've been in the United States for less than 2 years and are not in immigration court proceedings. This is important to keep in mind because If somebody has been in the United States for more than 2 years, they may want to think about carrying proof of that with them, in their wallet. Some examples of proof of that could be a vaccination card that shows that was vaccinated more than 2 years ago, bills or other documents that have the date, the person's name, and then people who are afraid of being persecuted should say so when they encounter immigration. That's really important because that people who are afraid of being persecuted have a right to request an interview to determine whether that fear is credible. People who are not afraid of being persecuted should not lie, and they should not say that they are afraid when they are not. Remember, not a good idea to lie to law enforcement, and we do not recommend that. I also wanted to share some information about the registration requirement, which is a kind of old and new requirement. It's an old requirement that wasn't implemented for a long time, but was implemented recently. So all non-citizens in the United States who've been here for more than 30 days are required to register or be registered and to submit biometrics. I've broken it down by age here because I think it's actually a very confusing rule. But non-citizens who are under 14 years old are required to be registered, and their parent is responsible for making sure that they're registered. So people who are under 14 years old are not fingerprinted. However, when somebody turns 14 years old, they're required to register themselves within 30 days of their birthday and have their fingerprints taken by immigration. When a person is over 14 years old, so either an adult or a teen, they are required to be registered, and anyone over 18 years old is required to carry proof of registration. Everyone is required to update their address with immigration within 10 days of moving. They can do that through their online account with USCIS, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or they can fill out a paper form called an AR-11, which does that change of address. So a lot of people are already registered or already considered registered. And so I'm going to go through who those people are so that they know that they are already registered. People who have a green card, permanent residents, they're already registered. Their green card is proof that they're registered. People who have a work permit, an employment authorization document, even if it's expired, that person is registered. People who were issued something called an I-94, which is a sheet of paper or a small sheet of paper that it's a piece of paper that immigration gives some people who are paroled into the United States, as well as some others. Those people are registered, and people who have been issued a notice to appear, even if it has not been filed with the immigration court, are registered. And some of these other documents also are proof of registration. I'm not going to be talking about them because they're pretty uncommon, and we have limited time here. So there are consequences to registering and to not registering. And I'm sharing this generally. Everyone needs to think about these factors for themselves. And I recommend talking to your attorney if you have one when you're making a decision about whether to register. Registration is not an immigration status, and it does not create any immigration benefit. There are consequences both to registering and to not registering. The consequences of registering are that registering means following the law. It also means avoiding criminal penalties for not registering. It also gives information to immigration that immigration can use for immigration enforcement purposes. The consequences of not registering are the big one is the potential to face criminal penalties for not registering. So that would include potentially fines and jail time. To register, a person needs to make a My USCIS online account and file Form G325R. Mira has come out with some really helpful resources in different languages about registration. If you want to access those, you can use the QR code on the screen. I'm just going to give you a moment if you're trying to get that QR code before I move on. All right. So family preparedness, we're going to shift over to family preparedness. Here are some things that people can do to prepare in case a family member is detained by ICE. I think it's also important to keep in mind that even if somebody has immigration status or they are a citizen, ICE makes mistakes. So it's always good to have a plan in general for an emergency. This can be an emergency plan in general for your family. It doesn't necessarily need to be an immigration-focused emergency plan. It's just good to have an emergency plan. So it's good to memorize the phone numbers of family members, and also, if you have an attorney, to memorize your attorney's phone number. Because when someone gets detained, their phone gets taken away from them, and they may not have those numbers readily available. The second thing is to gather immigration documents and identity documents, a list of medications, those types of things in a folder at home where they're safe and in one place. So in case something happens, everyone in the family knows that that's where they go to find the documents that a lawyer might need if their family member is detained, or that they might need if their family member is detained, so that they can let ICE know, for example, that their family member takes these medications, has these health conditions. It's also important to make lists. So everyone has day-to-day responsibilities, and it's important to make a list of what those responsibilities are and who will do them in the person's absence. So for example, paying rent. Who's going to pay rent? When is rent due? How does rent get paid? That's something to write down. Picking kids up from school. Who has permission to pick the kids up from school? Does the school know? That type of information is important. Administering medication. If you give medication to somebody, you're worried about being detained, it might be good to teach someone else how to do that in case you get detained. If you have pets, it's important to figure out who would be responsible for feeding your pets if you get detained. So those types of things. There may be other things. Everyone has different responsibilities. There may be other things to make lists about as well. Next, we have saving money. So immigration bonds are not cheap. The lowest possible is $1,500. So now is a good time to save money in case of an emergency, like an immigration detention. And then if somebody is eligible for a bond and they want to apply for a bond, they're going to need to show a couple different things. One is good moral character, meaning like they're a good person. And another is that they're not a threat to public safety. And another is that they have ties to the community. So gathering evidence of that can be helpful so that if somebody gets detained, they have that evidence ready and don't need to gather it while they're detained. All right, so this is a slide from This this QR code from Mira has resources in different languages for making a family preparedness plan. So I encourage you to scan it while I'm talking. Making a plan is a tool that can help parents make informed decisions about how to take care of their family. It gives parents and caregivers who are worried about being detained or deported the opportunity to make decisions about who will take care of their children in case they cannot, who will take care of their children's educational, medical, and emotional needs, and if the parent would want to bring their child with them if they're deported or leave the child here, it allows the parent to start thinking through that and making that decision. So I encourage you all to scan the QR code. And then if somebody gets detained, there are two things that are kind of legal related that I'm going to talk about doing. So the first thing is try to locate the person who's detained. When ICE detains somebody, it takes a little bit of time, maybe sometimes a lot of time, to put that person's information in the ICE system. But the place to look is this website, the ICE locator. And with the person's A number or with their name, date of birth, and country of birth, it's possible to look them up and see where they're being held. So that's information that you should have for all of your family members, their name, date of birth, and country of birth. Because if they are detained, it will help you find them. The other thing is, it's important to start looking for a lawyer. There may be other things that are important to do if a family member or friend is detained. I'm not going to be talking about those, but there are all kinds of things that have to do with like day-to-day living and taking care of that person's responsibilities and that person's needs. So when you're looking for a lawyer, we have some tips. It's important to know that a lawyer is a person in the United States who has a valid license to practice law. An accredited representative is a special kind of non-lawyer who works for a nonprofit organization and has received special training from the government or with the government's approval to help people with immigration cases. There is a website where you can look up if somebody is an accredited representative and if somebody is a lawyer. These are the only people who can give legal advice. Notary publics or notarios are not lawyers in the United States and they cannot provide legal advice. Sometimes people get confused about this because in other countries, notarios do give legal advice, but here they do not, or they do not do that legally. Interpreters and tax preparers are not lawyers unless they are lawyers, and they can't give legal advice unless they are lawyers. So an interpreter can help interpret or translate a document, and a tax preparer can help somebody fill out their taxes, but they can't tell somebody how the law affects their immigrations. Like that, they can't apply the law to the person's facts about their immigration status. So it's important to go to a lawyer who has a valid license to practice law or an accredited representative when seeking legal help. So when you're looking for a lawyer, a couple things to keep in mind. One, ask if the person is a lawyer. It's a totally valid question to ask. Are you a lawyer? The second is ask, what state are you a lawyer in? Every state has its own process for making people lawyers, and so every state has its own system. With immigration law is federal, so that means that lawyers who are licensed in one state can often give immigration advice in another state, but they can't give advice about state law in that other state. So ask what state they're a lawyer in. The reason you're asking that is every state has a directory where you can look up the person and see if they really are a lawyer and if there are complaints against them. So it's important to figure out what state it is, and then you can Google that and check if they're really a lawyer. It's also important to always review documents before you sign them. That includes with your lawyer. Always look over the documents, make sure everything's correct before you sign it. And always ask questions. A lawyer's job is to answer questions and to give advice and to help you understand your case as well. So always ask questions. We hold immigration legal clinics about every 6 weeks where we do consultations for advice. We right now are closed, but we're going to be opening up for our next clinic soon. I've included our intake line number here. So if you or your family want a consultation, this is the number to call if you want a consultation with my organization, Metro West Legal Services. We serve the Framingham area, and we do not charge. Please do not all call tomorrow, because if you do, the phones are going to be very busy, and we're not signing anyone up for a clinic tomorrow. So write down this number, maybe call in a couple weeks, and see if we can fit you in for a consultation. I also want to include this QR code that you can scan to get more resources from Mira Coalition about knowing your rights, what your rights are in various situations. If you're not an immigrant, or if you are, and you want to figure out, like, what are my rights as somebody who sees immigration enforcement happening, there's information about that too on Mira's website. There just wasn't enough time for me to speak about that today. So I encourage you to take a scan of this and check out their resources. They're in a lot of different languages, including Spanish and Portuguese. So you should all be able to find something there that's helpful. I think this is the end of my presentation, but I'm going to be passing it back to the...
Just a moment, Aviva. There are a couple questions that came in that I think it might be worth talking about really quickly. First off, is it recommended for all recent immigrants, documented or undocumented, to secure an attorney?
I think it's certainly recommended to secure an attorney. However, there are not enough attorneys for everybody, and it's very hard to find an attorney. It is not required to have an attorney, but it's definitely recommended to look for one, and now is not too early to start looking.
Okay.
Sorry,
we have another question. What? Yes.
Is it okay for me to add to that really quickly? Because the question was undocumented or documented. And I just want to say that there's a lot of people who are documented, who have green cards, that are, calling legal services with questions and concerns. And I understand that it's a moment of high anxiety. But unless you have something of concern in your background, in your process, or you have criminal history, right? Something that, particularly could create a problem, then you might not need to rush and try and make an appointment with an attorney. Because as Aviva said, attorneys right now are really stretched trying to serve as many people as possible. So it's important that they're available to the folks who are actually at highest risk right now.
Thank you for that. We have another question. Even if the detention was a mistake, the bond has to be paid?
That's a little bit of a tricky question. If the detention was a mistake, say the person is a U.S. citizen, there's a way to challenge that in federal court. And I don't believe a bond is required if a federal judge requires that the person gets released. but it's really a case by case situation to figure out if somebody was wrongly detained. And yeah, maybe Jessica can add a little bit if she wants. Okay.
No, I think that's right.
Okay, and then we have one last question here. Should MWLS be one of the first calls slash contacts which people should make if any of these immigration situations happen to them? Do
So
you want walk-ins at MWLS? Thanks, Aviva.
thank you. We do not want walk-ins. It makes it hard for us to serve our clients when we have a lot of people walking in, but we do answer the phones. Sometimes our phones get busy, so if you can't get through, try again later. We do answer the phones. We don't take a lot of detained immigration cases. So if somebody gets detained, we're unlikely to be able to represent them. However, our intake staff has information that they can give people to try to help them know where to look to figure out if somebody's detained, to try to help them figure out where can I look to try to find a lawyer, what other resources exist depending on where they are detained.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for speaking for MWLS. Lillian, would you like to take over now for Brace? We're
Yes.
running a little late, but I think we can sort of eat a little bit into the questions at the end. And also, I think the Framingham Public Schools is not going to go for the 25 full minutes. So uh, have at it, Lillian. Thanks.
Let me try it. Okay. Okay. Hello, I'm Liliane Costa, Executive Director of Brace. Thanks for inviting Brace for this webinar. Over the next few minutes, I will share our mission, impact, partnership, and my top guidance for serving our community. Brace was founded in 2012 with the mission of help to educate and support its immigrants to self-advocate. In 2024, we enrolled 10,292 people in Mass Health and Health Connector. We had 2 vaccination clinics, delivered 161 doses. We provide 7,134 consular services, 944 notary acts, and helped 41 families to complete citizenship application. We taught ESL for 89 people, registered 30 children for school, and offered some cultural classes. We answered 4,217 general info requests and referred families to rent assistance, financial donation, and counseling sections. Our partnership with the government and community, we build local alliances. We work with school districts and parents to host workshops on health, legal rights, and civic orientation. On any resident who walks through our door can get a one-stop referral to housing, food pantries, legal clinics, and mental health counseling. We administer city, state, and federal grants to run the community health programs, everything from rent relief to vaccine drives. Through regular surveys and focus group, we gather stories to inform local and state policies to shape our next steps. Our guidance is stay current on policy and champions immigrants' needs. Track updates from Mass Health, the Health Connector, and federal homemake sites. Train staff in trauma-informed, culturally responsive practices so every family feels safe and heard. Invite clients to be part of the planning phases of programs. Use their suggestions to make services more effective. Provide clear materials in English, Portuguese, and Spanish so no one misses critical information. In this slide, our community partners from foundations. We have this as only information. We have partnership with a lot of foundations, other organizations, and in the right side, you can see some our services we provide last year. Thank you for your time and commitment for this immigrant equity. You can find more details at our website or reach us by email or phone, and you can always follow us to see and stay informed. And thank you, everybody, to host me.
All right, thank you so much for that. Appreciate all the work that Brace does for the community, and folks now know a way that they can reach out to get some more support from Brace. Next up, we have Mira, who's going to be speaking. This is Jessica Kiko, and we can see her slides just fine now. So, Jessica, whenever you're ready.
Great. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I'm here representing the MIRA Coalition. MIRA stands for Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. We bring together more than 150 organizations all across the state to advocate to make the lives of immigrants and refugees here in Massachusetts better. We also have a helpline. I'll tell you more about that at the end. And we do a lot of community education and training. We have a citizenship application program, and we also have a program that coordinates some services in some of the family shelters across Massachusetts. So my background is also as an immigration lawyer, just like Aviva. And I do a lot of Know Your Rights trainings, but I was asked to talk to you all tonight about ways that you can become engaged in immigrant advocacy. And so I'm going to talk about a few ways in which you can become more involved in this work, whether you're an immigrant yourself or you view yourself as an ally or an advocate. So the first thing I want to mention, and this can be true for everyone, is that you can take time to learn more about immigrants and immigrant communities all across Massachusetts. We have some wonderful fact sheets on our website talking about economic contributions of our immigrant communities, talking about immigrant children and families in Massachusetts. Here in this slide, I've shared just a couple of statistics about how much immigrant workers contribute to our community, how many children in the United States are immigrants themselves or have immigrant parents. And there's a lot more information like this that you can have and that you can learn not just about the state, but also about your more local community. because sometimes when we advocate for immigrants, it can be helpful to be able to share some basic statistics. You and I, and probably everyone on this webinar tonight, already knows how much immigrants contribute to our communities, but there are many other people that don't know the facts. And so to be able to know some facts and be able to share them can be really important. In addition to the fact sheets that we have on our website, I wanted to share some other organizations that have done a great job at providing accurate and thorough information. So there's something called the American Immigration Council. They have a fact sheet and lots of data specific to Massachusetts. There are some great reports that have come from Massachusetts and Boston-based organizations that look more at all the different ways economically, but also socially and culturally in which immigrants contribute to our communities. And then there's the Migration Policy Institute, which is more of like a think tank research group in Washington, D.C., but they have wonderful data available on their website. So if this is of interest to you, if you really want to dig deep, these are some of the options available to you. The slides will be shared, and all of these are links that will bring you to additional information. So that's the first thing. You can learn more so that you can easily share facts. The second thing is that now more than ever, people need to hear real stories, right? Some people may be convinced by statistics and figures, but a lot of people, the way that you move, the way that you change where they are and what they believe about immigration is by sharing individual stories. I think all of us have had this experience, right? That someone thinks one thing about immigration, but they think another very specific thing about a specific immigrant that they know, right? And so sharing individual stories can be really important. So I wanted to share a couple places. Of course, you can draw on your own story, on the stories of the people around you and in your community, but there's also some wonderful places where you can go to find stories. And one of them is this bank of stories from the Immigrant Learning Center, an organization right here in Massachusetts. I think they're in Malden. Another place can be from this website, Define American. And so the more we can share stories of everyday people in our communities and the ways that they are striving to improve their lives and improve the lives of their communities, I think that the better off we all are. If you want to share your own story, right? And not everyone wants to, and I respect that. But if sharing your own story is something that is meaningful to you, is something that you're going to feel is empowering, there's some great tools out there to help you learn how to tell your story in the most powerful way. In your own words, staying true to yourself, but also in a way that allows you to share your story in a way that is likely to have the impact that you want. So here we share one toolkit that is from the ACLU, not here in Massachusetts. It's actually from the ACLU in Kansas, but everything they say here applies. So certainly if you're someone who's going to pick up the phone, call a legislator, or even just have a conversation with a neighbor or a community member, these are some tools available to you to help you prepare. And then staying up to date. This is really easy to say. It's just two short words, right? Stay updated. There's so much happening in the world of immigration. Right now, a lot of policy changes and practical changes happening every day. And I want to acknowledge that for many people who could be directly impacted by some of these changes, it can be overwhelming to absorb all that information. It can actually be quite traumatizing, right? And so as much as possible, I tend to tell people, stay off social media, limit your news intake, but make sure that the sources that you're looking to when you're trying to find out what is actually happening in the world of immigration or sources that you trust, right? So One thing I wanted to share is that on our website, we have a community events calendar. So every time that there are events in our community from one of our member organizations, we try to add that information here on the calendar. And so if you want to show up and show your support for immigrant communities, or if you want to be in community with others, this can be a great place to look. And then if you want to learn more and stay up to date, I do a lot of trainings all the time, including on simple things like ABCs of immigration, know your rights, but also on policy updates. We do policy updates at least 3 times a year. So you can stay up to date that way. You can sign up to get our bulletin. And then there's wonderful national organizations as well that do a great job of sharing information that is accessible to the community. The Immigrant Legal Resource Center, the National Immigration Law Center, and then Immigrants Rising in particular. I want to lift up this organization because they do a lot of storytelling and community information from the community to the community. So it really has a different feel, right? It's not policy advocacy, it's really community information. You know, I included this slide because it feels awkward to talk about immigration without acknowledging all the many different changes. We don't have the time tonight to talk about what some of those policy changes are, though I'm happy to address questions when we get to the question and answer portion of the evening. But I wanted to acknowledge 3 things, the last one of which Aviva has already spoken about, right? The new registration requirements. So we've talked about that a little bit already. But the other 2 is the many changes that are coming with the administration trying to take legal status away from people. So we've seen that in the announcements around ending temporary protected status or TPS for Venezuelans, which had been put on hold by the courts. And then on Monday, the Supreme Court said that the administration can move forward and terminate TPS for Venezuelans and for Haitians and Afghans in the coming months as well. We've also seen many people that entered the country lawfully through parole, being told that their parole is no longer valid. Some of that has been successfully challenged in the courts. In other cases, it hasn't. So there's a lot of people who have been present lawfully, who have work permits, who are living in our communities, who are seeing their status being taken away or threatened. And then we've also seen increased community enforcement. I think we all know that increased use of detention in the community, expedited removal, which Aviva also spoke about. So you can learn about immigrants, you can share your story and change the narrative, you can stay up to date, and then you can be a resource. And attending an event like tonight allows you to be a resource for your community because now you've learned your rights, right? Now you have some basic information that you can share. This is just an image of some of our Know Your Rights one-page handouts that are available on our website. The QR code here will bring you to our Know Your Rights page that Aviva also shared before. We have these Know Your Rights one-pagers in over a dozen languages. So here I included English, Portuguese, and Spanish, but we have them in many, many more languages. So you can have these on you at all times to share with people in need. You can also share a Know Your Rights card. I think most people at this point have seen a Know Your Rights card or know about them. These are the red cards, but they don't need to be red. They can just be on regular paper. On one side, in your own language, it reminds you of what your rights are. All the rights that we spoke about tonight, right? The right to remain silent, the right to keep the door to your home closed, the right not to sign anything without first reviewing it with a lawyer. And then on the other side, it informs the immigration officer or the law enforcement officer that you are choosing to assert your rights, that you know what your rights are and you're exercising those rights. So it is not always necessary to wave around one of these cards. But if you're in that moment where you feel like you need to assert your rights, it can be easier to have this tool with you. And then the family preparedness tool that Aviva also shared, I just wanted to share the visual. Again, it's here in English, Spanish, and Portuguese, but it's available in Chinese, in Nepali, Haitian Creole, and Arabic as well. And then where to find legal resources, right? So using the Massachusetts Legal Resource Finder, this is the statewide directory for civil legal needs. If you go in there and you put in the zip code for Framingham, you're going to find Metro West Legal Services. They're going to come up for sure. But you might also get some additional ideas so that you can reach out and see if you can find someone who is open for intake or get on a wait list. I've also included here the City of Boston free consultation, though that's, of course, limited to Boston residents. And then the National Legal Services Directory, because we know people move or they have family living in other parts of the country. Finally, I wanted to share 2 phone numbers that everyone should know or save in their phones. One is our immigration helpline. So this is not an emergency number. It is not a hotline. So we do try to call people back as quickly as possible. We cannot offer representation, but we can provide a lot of information, orientation, and referrals. We are able to do calls in English, Spanish, and Haitian Creole, and we use a language line for all other interpretation needs. So both individuals or service providers can give us a call and leave a message. And then the Lucy hotline. This is the statewide ICE watch and ICE verification hotline. This is a hotline, so they should pick up when you call. Between 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. is when they're active. It's multilingual. And so if you are seeing ICE activity in your area and you want to make others in your community aware of that, you can call the hotline, let them know, and they will send, whenever possible, trained individuals on site to confirm what is happening, remind people of what their rights are. And then lastly, now that you have all this information, you've learned how to be a resource, is advocating. This year and next year, Mira is going to be working on what we've called our Protecting Our Immigrant Communities campaign. This is a campaign that is putting forward a number of bills that were selected by our membership through a membership vote when we met back in November to decide what are the things that are most important to our membership. And so the 2 top bills for us that we're working on during this legislative session at the state level are the Safe Communities Act, which is about disentangling immigration enforcement from local law enforcement so that people can feel safe calling the police, seeking the assistance of the police without having to worry that that is going to lead to immigration enforcement. That's one of the bills. And then the other bill is something called the Immigrant Legal Defense Act, which is really about creating funding and infrastructure to provide free immigration legal services to people facing deportation. So this QR code, we're full of QR codes tonight. This QR code will bring you to what we call our petition. Our petition is the language that you see right here. So you can add your name saying that you believe that all individuals have deserve dignity, safety, equal protection under the law, and that you pledge to stand in solidarity with immigrant communities and to demand policies that uphold human rights, ensure equal access to resources, and foster a future where all individuals, regardless of status, can live free from fear and injustice. So if this resonates with you, if you read this and hear this and think, yes, I believe this, you can scan the QR code. The petition is available in English, Spanish, and Portuguese. So you can select your language and sign the petition. And I believe that was my last slide. So I will stop screen sharing and pass it back to you, Matt.
Great. We don't have any new questions at this point, so I think let's just head on to our next speaker. We have Framingham Public Schools and Keefe Technical who are going to be speaking to us next.
Hi, good evening. Bob Tremblay, Superintendent, Framingham Public Schools.
I'm John Evans, Superintendent of Keefe Tech.
And so we can, John, I don't know, we're going to share the podium here. And I just want to thank all the previous speakers for the resources that they've shared. It'll be really helpful to have this information to provide to our school communities. And John and I represent, two of the schools in the greater Framingham community. We do have a consortia that we work with, right? We work across pre-K-12. We work with St. Bridget and the Metro West Jewish Day School, with Framingham State University, with Mass Bay Community College. These are some of our educational partners in our community. We meet quarterly, and issues around immigration and keeping our students safe and our families informed has been a central topic for us. So I wanted to just share that while John and I are representing probably two of the largest entities of this Framingham, the schooling in Framingham, there are many other educational leaders who are paying very close attention to this and who are partners in this work. So I'm going to share the microphone with my colleague, John, and we'll just share some of the work that we're focused on in our schools. And then we can turn it to the question and answer portion to see how we can be helpful. So John, with that, I'll kick it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Bob. It's a pleasure to be here with you this evening, and I will share that I've learned a lot too in terms of the legal resources and information that's going to be valuable for me to share with our school community. We are neither legal nor immigration experts in our line of work, but I am happy to share some of the services that we have available to all of our students, including those who are the focus of this presentation. So I wanted to just share some of that information, if I can spend just a couple minutes doing that. And at Keefe Tech, we have a fantastic and very diverse group of students that very much reflect the demographics of the communities that we serve, with most of our students coming from the city of Framingham. And for all of our students, we have what I believe is a good amount of resources and supports available to them. For our school of a little bit under 900 students, we have 4 caseload carrying guidance counselors, 2 of whom are trilingual, who are fluent in both Spanish and Portuguese. We have an adjustment counselor, 2 school psychologists, 2 school nurses, and a program that's specifically designed for students who are having acute mental health issues or who are transitioning back from a hospitalization to provide supports for them within the school environment. Our student service department has a number of resources available in terms of curriculum and prevention activities, and we have a number of very positive community partnerships. One of the main ones being our partnership with Framingham Public Schools and the relationship we have with Dr. Tremblay and his staff. We also work closely with Care Solace, counseling referral service for our students. We have a relationship with McLean Hospital for monthly consultations. Metro West Legal Services actually came to our school and provided a very helpful professional development program in February, and we're very grateful for that as well, to help us guide our students and families. And also we work with Massachusetts Partnership for Youth, Psychiatric Emergency Services, and Tempo Young Adult Resource Center. So we try to provide a wealth of supports for our students. And in terms of our demographics, we have, for just under 900 of our students, over 100 are classified as English language learners, and a large number more who are not receiving direct services are have family members for whom English is not their primary language or first language. So we are very tuned into the supports that we can provide. So that's a little bit about the resources that we provide, and maybe I can pass it back to Dr. Tremblay before we talk about our specific responses.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, John. And to be sure, our staff share in some of these same concerns. We have many staff who are are visiting professors, if you will, on visa, various kinds of work visas, and who have spouses who are concerned by the same issues that affect and are concerning to our students and their families. So this is very close to the work we do every day. But one of the early on when we knew that there would be increased presence of ICE in the community and concerns about trying to distinguish what a judicial warrant is, and those kinds of very nuanced details people would need to be informed about, was we put together a frequently asked questions document for our staff, shared it widely with all the district staff, also with families, providing resources on our district website. I know a few of the previous speakers had mentioned the red cards, or the Know Your Rights, and here's an example of that card here. And so the Framingham Teachers Association was actually instrumental in providing these cards for families who, through the school, so students have access to these, families have access to these sort of pocket-sized cards in multiple languages. Again, as was mentioned previously, the cards don't have to be read. That information is available also on our district website. And so I think that for our approach to what's happening, and there's been so many shared resources today for families, and I hope that the recorded session that's provided broadly, as I learned an awful lot myself in this process, and I think that's what it is for all of us. It's continuing to learn about what this means, how our families are and staff are impacted, and what role does the school have. John was talking about resources for counseling staff and our support staff. And I guess the one thing I would want to impart to our families, we know early on there was, whether it was intentionally motivated as a scare tactic. We had one day, this particular Thursday, as I recall, our attendance plummeted that day in our schools, where we had 2,500 student absences that day out of, just over 9,000 students. It was very concerning, and it really makes teaching and learning impossible when you have those kinds of absenteeism situations. And so one piece of advice, if I may offer in this presentation to our families, is schools are so much more than, and both for Keefe and for Framingham Public Schools and many of our other educational partners, that schools provide meals for many of our children, the meals they need in their day, in addition to the education they need. But what's most important is don't put yourself in a situation to be non-compliant with the law. The law requires that students ages 6 to 16 attend school every day. That's a statutory requirement. And if students are not coming to school, I mean, if they're sick or they have to be out for some personal matter, it's understandable. But what we're finding is families will be fearful and not send their child to school, and in effect create a situation where the schools may have to act. And we don't want to necessarily have to bring families to the courthouse, as you saw in the illustration, right? There's places and spaces where that are more challenging if families are worried, and courthouses could be one of those, of course. And so don't put yourself in a situation to knowingly break the law. So children must come to school. We don't require documentation to enroll students. We don't do that in school. And just also to be clear, we have not seen any, while there may be presence of immigration enforcement in the community, we're aware of that. I have not seen, I can speak for Framingham Public Schools, I have not heard that any of our schools have had those encounters on their school property. There may be adjacent encounters, which is concerning and traumatic, and that's important to acknowledge. But they're not coming to the schoolhouse doors. I don't expect that they will. And certainly I'm expecting that I'll know about that if that were the case. And I can tell you that has not been the case, to my knowledge, in Framingham since this really surfaced, particularly in January of this year. So, John, I'm not sure if you had similar experiences or not, if you have additional advice to offer, but I just would want to leave people with that information about the schools and sort of our expectations, our promises, and what we've observed to date as a matter of practice.
Sure, we've had a similar lack of experience with direct contact with immigration enforcement within our school, but like Framingham Public Schools, we worked to gain an understanding of what exactly our responsibilities and requirements were in response to immigration enforcement if it were to occur. So we've consulted with our legal counsel. We have collaborated with area partners, sister schools, schools in the area. And we have also communicated directly with our staff about procedures for what would happen if, how we would react, and what we are required to do, what we're not required to do. We have also communicated with our school community, not so much through the lens of directly immigration enforcement, but more general information about how does one come into our school building? How does one get access to information about our students generally? And that's good information for everybody to have in terms of the public, the community just coming into the building, walking in, getting access to students or records. There are some strict requirements. We want to know, we know what those are, and we believe we know how to respond. And we've shared that confidence with our school community and staff in the hopes that that would assuage some anxieties about uncertainty, just that we understand the rules we have to follow, and we plan to be compliant while being as supportive as possible within our school community.
So, Matt, I don't know if there's more to be discussed. You'd like us to share if there's specific questions. The schools are kind of all encompassing. We know it's very much the center of our communities, but just to leave that level of, well, you can't promise that safety or a full insulation from the harms around us. I think John and I can both give some assurances that we have policies and procedures in place. We have locked school facilities. We have communication protocols, and we have expectations that we set with staff, and we have very well trained professionals that will help our students work through matters of concern or even trauma. And we just need our students to come to school every day. And that is the most important piece of advice I can impart in this call, is because we will keep them safe to the extent the law will allow us to, and we'll provide meals and shelter and resources to our families. We can't provide that when they're not coming in our schoolhouse doors.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking about that for a little bit. I'm going to give the interpreters a short break. Renan is looking a little overwhelmed there. So thank you so much, Renan, for your help. I'm going to give them a short break while people ask some questions. We're going to go into our Q&A session now. We've got a lot of time left. I don't know if we're going to need to go the whole time, but we've had some questions coming in throughout that we've answered. So let's give folks 2 minutes to send some questions and give our interpreters a short break. All right. Sorry, interpreters. I can't handle the silence any longer. So let's get going with this next section. We have 3 questions right now that are open. The first question is from Tracy Bryant. She says, is there any redress for damaged property or rights violations by ICE? And I'd like to remind all speakers, please make sure to speak slowly so that the interpreters have plenty of time to think through what they're saying. Is there any redress for damaged property or rights violations by ICE?
Go ahead, Aviva.
Right, I can take it. So sometimes it's possible to make a complaint, file a lawsuit, or try to seek some sort of redress. However, it's a lot easier to do that with the help of a lawyer. I would say there are two organizations to maybe reach out to if this is something that's happened. One is the ACLU of Massachusetts, and the other one is Lawyers for Civil Rights. They both have websites. If you Google them, you will find them. But those are places where you can look for those types of answers or for help with that type of issue.
Viva, if you could just hit done on that question so it shows up as answered.
Yes, and also just a reminder, you can ask questions in any language, in Spanish and Portuguese and or in English. Your question will get translated.
Thank you for that. I'd like to remind listeners they can submit their questions anonymously. And for the person who raised their hand, please ask your questions in the text in the Q&A section. I'm not going to be doing hand raising today. We have another question from Tracy Bryant. Does one have to have had a professional diagnosis of, quote, fear of persecution? How does it work? I think this is for Bob and John. I think that maybe came up during theirs. I don't know. I'm not sure when that came up or if
I hope not. I don't have an answer for that question.
Okay. I'll clarify.
I'm not sure. I don't know the context.
I can try to answer this question. Fear of persecution is something that generally comes up when people are wanting to apply for asylum or sometimes related forms of protection called withholding of removal or protection under the Convention Against Torture. So there's really no such thing as a professional diagnosis of fear of persecution, right? When people are applying for asylum, the standard is they have to show a well-founded fear of persecution, and they have to show that a central reason why they would be persecuted in their country is their race, their religion, their nationality, their political opinion, or because they belong to some type of particular social group. And it's that particular social group category that's been used to be able to give people protection when they fear maybe harm based on their gender identity or their sexual orientation, or sometimes if they've experienced severe domestic violence. Asylum is quite challenging. Our laws are very restrictive. And so being afraid of going back doesn't necessarily mean that you will fit the definition of asylum. So it's either an asylum officer, or if the person is in deportation proceedings, then it's an immigration judge that will make an initial decision about whether someone meets that definition to be able to qualify for asylum. Sometimes, in not all cases, but in some asylum cases, it can sometimes be helpful to have an evaluation if someone has experienced trauma or physical harm. And so that's where someone with medical training might come in. But otherwise, it's a legal determination that's made. So I hope that answers the question.
Thank you for that. There's another one. How is information about attendance and truancy reporting being communicated to families? This is directed at Bob Tremblay. How is the information about attendance and truancy reporting being communicated to families?
Sure, that one I can take.
Good.
We review regularly our student attendance daily, in fact, and so we work with we have a team of wraparound coordinators in our schools, and wraparound support is really aimed at like working like a social worker or school counselor, but in this case, it's helping families align to community resources, like the community resources on this call this evening, but also, access for food security or how to navigate complex medical systems, whatever they may be. But our wraparound coordinators are all multilingual, and they do work with our families directly. And so we have family liaisons who will work, or counseling staff, or at the high school vice principals. There's a number of professionals that are monitoring regularly student attendance, and if we see patterns or frequency, we make a personal outreach to the families, and just trying to see what's going on and how we can be helpful. And maybe there's other reasons for a child being out of school. In large part, this year has been due to transportation. That did shift with concerns around immigration, presence of ICE in the community, and a fear for just being in that space between home and school. But it's important for us to know that, so that we can provide the resources or help navigate families to navigate the Metro West Regional Transit Authority, the buses in our community, or to get them on a school bus, or to help them access school. So we do that as literally a case by case, and we pay attention to all of our students, and it's through a personal outreach to the family, ideally in that family's preferred language, and certainly in a way that's seeking to be helpful and not punitive.
John, can you speak briefly about that for Keefe Technical as well?
I mean, I think it's a very similar answer in terms of the type of resources we have available and the communication that we have to our families and students about the importance of attending school and the services we have within our building.
Great, thank you. We have a question in Portuguese that I'd like to have translated if possible. Renan, do you see the question? I don't know how we're going to do this exactly.
I can read it out in English if
Okay,
it's easier.
that would be
I'm not
wonderful.
fluent in Portuguese. Or Liliani, do you want to?
Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, I was just gonna say, um, someone already started the process a year ago for a green card, but still hasn't received any documentation. If you're detained, is there any risk of deportation, or can this be used in your favor to be released? Am I getting that right, Liliani?
Exactly.
Okay. Aviva, did you want to answer, or do you want me to?
You can go ahead.
Okay. Please jump in if I'm missing something. So the process of getting a green card can look very differently for different people. There are different ways to get there. In some instances, it can be relatively quick. In other instances, it's something that can take years. So it's not unusual for someone to have started the process and still be in process a year later. Being in process can mean different things, right? So certainly the fact that someone has something pending with immigration already can be helpful, because it shows that you might have a route to permanent status in the United States, and that can be used in your favor, both to be able to secure bond and be released from detention, and also ultimately to be able to win your case and remain in the United States. But it also very much depends on where you are in that process and what kind of barriers you might face in that process. Unfortunately, because as Aviva said, we're lawyers, but we're not your lawyers. We can't really advise you more specifically, but always the fact that someone might have relief available to them can be helpful.
I also just added to the answer, the written answer to the question, 2 links. The first link is to figure out what's going on with your case with immigration. You can go on USCIS's website. I've linked it for you, and put in your receipt number and see, if anything, if there's been any change in that application. The second link that I included is to check on what is a normal amount of time to wait for each type of immigration application. And you can go on there and put in the type of immigration application where it's being processed, and you can see how long the government says that most of the cases are taking. So you can kind of get a sense of whether your case is taking longer than usual or if they're just taking a long time for everybody.
Great. Thank you so much for that. We have another in Spanish here. I guess I could take a crack at it with my okay Spanish skills. It looks like it says with a diagnostic for I think it's a kidney disease. With a medical diagnosis for a kidney disease, would they leave me in peace? I think that's what the question is asking.
I can
I got a big thumbs up from Mauricio, so yes.
I can
Can
take
someone
that
take
one.
this?
So unfortunately, immigration detains people with medical conditions, including kidney conditions. It's really important if you have a kidney condition um, where you need treatment on a regular basis that you let immigration know that if you're getting detained, and that you may want to also memorize the phone number for the place where you get that treatment, so that you can try to connect them with immigration if you are detained, so that you're taken care of.
Great. Thank you for that one. We have another question around fear of persecution. I'm not sure if that was answered fully during the prior answers, but it says, is fear of persecution a reason listed on an immigration application or form that one needs to immigrate from a country?
So generally not. Um, when you're immigrating to the United States, you're usually, if you're outside of the United States and you're seeking entry, you could either be seeking entry on a temporary basis, right? Like a visitor or a temporary worker or an international student. Or if you're coming to live here permanently with a green card, you're usually being sponsored by a family member or an employer. People that fear persecution and want to apply for status generally already have to be present in the United States, and then they can apply for asylum or other forms of relief. We also have a refugee resettlement program, though it's not really operational right now, where refugees that have been displaced from their countries of origin are referred by the United Nations to the United States and other safe countries around the world. And then the United States will interview them, decide to accept them as refugees, and bring them here on that basis. But that's a small number of the overall number of people that come to the United States lawfully every year.
I just I'm going to give the interpreters a moment. I just want to add to that often when we see the news, immigration is kind of shown to us as something that's black and white, where somebody either is here legally or isn't here legally or came here legally and or didn't come here legally or is legal or is not legal. Immigration law is actually very complicated and there's a lot of gray area in between. So even if somebody came here without authorization, it's possible that since arriving here, they may have been able to secure some sort of immigration benefit that would protect them from deportation. It's a very case by case type of thing, and it's important to remember that immigration is really complicated and there's a lot of gray area in between, and it's not just that there's this legal box and there's this not legal box and that everyone fits completely in one or the other.
Great, thank you for that. We have a question. Does Framingham Police support ICE activities in the city of Framingham, presumably? Framingham Police chose not to attend tonight, but they gave me a statement that they asked that I read. They said, we follow the current law, Commonwealth versus Sre Nuon Loon, SJC 12276. from July 24th, 2017. We also follow our policies and procedures as it pertains to engaging with the public, making criminal arrests, etc. Can someone here, assume someone here can briefly describe Commonwealth versus Loon. I would appreciate that for our audience.
It's like a game of chicken. Do you want me to do it, Aviva? Or okay. So Commonwealth v. Lunn is a Supreme Judicial Court decision. So this is the highest court in Massachusetts that basically said that that state that the state does not have the authority to hold people solely for immigration purposes. So when someone is being released because they've posted bail or finished serving their sentence or charges have been dropped and they're being released, sometimes immigration will place a detainer on that person, essentially requesting that the police or whoever the entity is hold on to the person so they could be transferred into immigration custody. But our state courts have been very clear that our state agencies do not have the authority to hold people when they otherwise would be needing to release them because they've posted bond or finished serving their sentence or something like that. So it can get more complex than that, but basically that's what it is.
Anything you'd like to add, Aviva? Okay, great. And someone gave us a link to the case, the court case in question there. Sharon here. Hopefully that shows up for folks. There's a question in Spanish. I believe it says, is there a second section of speakers after this Q&A? There is not. If you're waiting for a second section of speakers, this is it, folks. We are having this Q&A and then closing out, but we have many questions left. We have another question in Portuguese. Jessica, would you like to take your chance with this one as well?
Sure. I've been working on my Portuguese, so this is helpful to me.
Great.
So individuals that were detained, but they don't have a deportation order, and the lawyer got them released. What happens to them afterwards? Do they have an opportunity to get another better protection, like a green card? Am I getting that right? Yeah, okay. So again, there's lots of different possibilities here because cases are different. But when someone is detained and then with the help of a lawyer, they're able to get released, usually because they've paid bond, right? The bond allows them to go back home and not sit in jail or detention, but it doesn't mean that they're no longer in deportation proceedings, usually. Sometimes maybe they're able to dismiss everything, like if it was a mistake, right? But usually if they're released, that just means that they can go back home, but they have to continue participating in their immigration court process. So that means continuing to attend court and hopefully continuing to work with the lawyer to see what types of defenses to deportation, what types of application for status they might be able to put forward. And what might be available to someone will be very different depending on their individual circumstances.
Thank you so much for that. I have a question. Is it reasonable to conclude that law enforcement agencies, for instance, ICE, cannot have access to any student records and are not allowed to roam the building looking for particular students?
I'd be happy to answer that. And there are two different questions there. So we are aware that there is a very specific legal document required to get access to either students or information within a school, and that must be met before any access is given. In terms of the term roaming, it sort of implies that you would have enforcement officers screening or walking around. We do not anticipate that by any means, or nor would that be allowed within a school building. But there are some legal documents that would require access to the school, but it would not be a situation where enforcement officers are roaming the school looking for people. There's a very specific scenario, and it is only that we would permit.
Anything you'd like to add, Bob?
No, John summed it up perfectly. The same holds true.
Great, thank you. I have a question. Is it legal for ICE officers to cover their faces? Do they have to show their badge and say their names?
I think nobody's jumping to answer this question because it's such a hard one. I'll be honest, I don't really know the answer about whether it's lawful to cover their faces. I have not seen anything that indicates they cannot cover their faces. However, obviously, when people are covering their faces and not identifying themselves, it's really hard to even know if it is law enforcement of any kind or other types of criminal activity. In terms of whether people have to identify themselves or share their badge numbers, Aviva, maybe you know more. This is a question that comes up a lot, and I've researched it, and I have not been able to find anything that specifically says they must identify themselves, except for their internal guidance, their internal agency protocol that says it's best practice for them to identify themselves. In practice, what we are seeing is that generally officers, when specifically asked or confronted, will say that they're federal enforcement or immigration enforcement and will not always share their badge number or name. But I think this is an area that requires more study and more advocacy. Sorry, Aviva, you were going to add something.
I was just going to add, you're certainly allowed to ask, and ask respectfully. Say, can I have your name and your badge number? I just want to make sure that you are who you say you are.
Okay, thank you. We have a question from one person. I have a translation of it here. It says, "Can you help me? I was the victim of a scam." This is in Spanish. "I was the victim of a scam. Someone pretended to be a lawyer and just took our money." Yeah, does anyone have any thoughts on what this person can do?
So I can put a link in the chat in response to this question. We have resources on our website about this very thing. Aviva talked earlier about who's allowed to provide legal services and who should not be providing legal services. And we know that sometimes people are taken advantage of. This is often called in the field of immigration law notario fraud. So there can sometimes be some recourse. Here, I'm putting it here in the chat. On this link, you can find videos and fact sheets in Spanish and other languages. The number one place that we refer people to is the Massachusetts Attorney General's office, who investigates these situations. And then, depending on the facts, there might be additional forms of relief as well.
Great. It appears we have a couple questions about the CBP Home app. One about CBP Home, one about CBP One. So I'm going to ask the one in Portuguese first. It says, "I heard on the radio that using the CBP One app might allow someone without legal immigration status to leave the country with a clean record. Is that a way to request, quote, voluntary departure? I didn't understand."
I can take this one. So The CBP, first of all, the CBP One app has now become the CBP Home app. The government changed what they're calling it and they changed its purpose. The CBP One app was used for people to request appointments at the border to enter the United States, and the CBP Home app is being used to return to a home country. It's Your question is very good because I think it's also a question that a lot of lawyers have. It's not super clear how this is being done. And once someone is outside the United States, if they've given up their rights, there's not much to do about it, or not much that can be done about it. Voluntary departure is usually something that's requested by a person in immigration court or to to immigration. I'm not sure if using the CBP Home app qualifies as voluntary departure. I think it probably doesn't. And it's important to talk to a lawyer about what it would mean to use the CBP Home app to return to someone's home country, because they could be giving up a lot of rights that they have, and giving up opportunities here to apply for legal status.
I would add, and this perhaps also addresses the other question about CBP Home app. I would add that the narrative, the rhetoric coming from the administration has been leave. If you leave on your own, it's going to be easier for you to come back. But for the vast majority of people, that is a myth. Because it is true that leaving without a deportation order can make it easier for people to come back when they have a lawful pathway to return to the United States. But there are many people, most people who are currently undocumented in the United States that wouldn't have a lawful pathway to try and come back. So whether they leave on their own or they leave because they're forced to or ordered to is not going to significantly impact whether they have a lawful way to come back in the future. So it's very misleading rhetoric that is coming from the administration on that.
It's also possible that the government has said that they will give $1,000 to people who use the app to leave, and request this $1,000. But they are saying that they'll give this $1,000 once the person is outside the United States, and it's not clear how that would even happen. It's not clear that it would even happen. So it's important to take any information like this with a grain of salt, consult someone who's a lawyer or an accredited representative, and try to get more information about it before taking any action.
There's a question coming up asking about workers' rights for immigrants. I'm going to ask Diego Lowe, who's an attendee, to answer that, but I have to enable him to talk. So I'm going to ask another question first. So this is your 5-minute warning, Diego. We have another question. What is the best way to ask ICE to see a warning? Sorry. What is the best way to ask ICE to see a warrant without opening the door?
I can take this one. So if you're standing at your door, you could probably hear people in the hall or outside your door. That means that they can also hear you. So if ICE is outside your door, and you want to ask them to show a warrant, you can, without opening the door, you can say, "I'd like to see your warrant. Can you please slip it under the door? Or could you show it to me through the window over here?" And they can put it up to the window and you can look at it, or they can slip it under the door and you can look at it.
All right, Diego. The question is, what are an immigrant's rights as a worker? I might need to do something further to activate. We don't hear you, Diego, if you're talking. Okay, does someone else want to take this one? What are an immigrant's rights as a worker?
I don't think I'm nearly as qualified as Diego to answer this question, but
Yeah,
I would generally say that the rights that you have as a worker are rights that you have as a worker, regardless of your immigration status. So the right to be paid the minimum wage, to overtime, to accrue sick time for certain employers, all of those rights are rights that you have because you work, and not because you're a US citizen or you have a work permit or some other lawful status. And I say that recognizing that people's ability to assert those rights without fear of significant retaliation when you lack immigration status are clearly different, right? But hopefully Diego can figure out how to unmute and add
looks like
there.
it looks like maybe he did. Diego, are you there now? All right. While Diego's starting to trying to figure that out, let's move on to another one here. We have one that says, I've seen some news reports from Tennessee and other places of people getting between their neighbors and ICE. It seems like in some of these situations that ICE agents are not allowed or unwilling to go past the neighbors, creating a barrier. Could you speak briefly about what is happening there and what is helpful or not helpful from bystanders in that situation?
I mean, I think, we've seen some of those instances here in Massachusetts as well. Generally, those people are engaging in some type of, community action, which could be perceived by immigration agents as of some form of obstruction of justice. So I think that there is some risk involved in that activity. I also think that sometimes, that has had the desired outcome. In other instances, it can have the effect of escalating the level of violence. So it's really hard to know, um, whether that type of action is actually helpful for the individual. And in addition to that, it can potentially be considered unlawful, depending on the circumstances.
Great. All right, let's go back for a moment to the question, what are an immigrant's rights as a worker? Diego, have you figured out your microphone yet? All right. I think we are done with all questions right now. If anyone else, oh, we have one more question that came in. I'm gonna quickly just translate it over here. Um, Actually, two questions. So one question says in Portuguese, is there any projection of how long this intensified action will continue, happening every day like it is now? Does this task force have an end date?
Take this one. I think everyone here on the panel doesn't know a whole lot more about this than you all do. I think everyone is hopeful that it will slow down or end at some point soon. However, we don't know what's coming down the pipeline. And I think it's impossible to know. Immigration detention relies on immigration having enough space to hold people. When immigration runs out of space, they cannot detain more people unless they deport more people, and they can only deport people so fast. So, if they are detaining people so quickly, and at such high rates, they may reach a point where they can't detain more people for some time until they've processed the people who are already detained.
All right, it's 8:55 right now, so I think it's time we wrap things up here. Um, Jesse, if you'd like to talk a little bit about summarizing this,
Sure.
anything else you'd want to say, and then after you go, I'd like to thank some folks for attending, for making this happen.
Absolutely. Wow. What an incredible night of information and resource sharing. Thank you all for joining us tonight. I want to extend my sincere gratitude to each of you, our speakers, Aviva Schaefer, Dr. Tremblay, Dr. Evans, Lillian Costa, and Jessica Kiko. I also want to extend my sincere gratitude to you, Matthew Brown, and the Human Relations Commissions for hosting this event. Your expertise, commitment, and compassion are vital to the safety and well-being of our immigrant communities. Tonight's webinar was about more than just information. It was about empowerment. We talked about your rights, the importance of preparation, student safety, community resources, and ways to advocate for yourself and your family. These aren't just issues that impact one group. They're issues of justice, equity, and community care that affects us all. I want to reiterate, whether you are a student, a parent, a neighbor, or a concerned resident, know that there are people and organizations here who stand with you and are ready to help. The City of Framingham remains committed to fostering an environment where every resident feels safe, heard, and respected. Please stay connected. Reach out to the organizations you heard from tonight. Share this information with others and continue to ask questions, speak up, and get involved. We will also make sure you have access to the resources and contacts shared during this session by posting this video to our City of Framingham YouTube channel in the next coming days. So on behalf of myself and the City of Framingham and our partners, thank you again for being here. Stay safe, stay informed, and please stay connected.
All right, thank you so much. I also just wanted to thank our interpreters. Thank you so much for going for 2 hours straight here. That's a very hard task, and yeah, we didn't make it easy for you, so thank you so much. I want to thank Susan, Katya, Nicole, and Mayor Satitsky from from the Framingham City government for helping make this happen, and thank you also, Jesse, for your good words at the beginning and end of this. Um, Thank you all, and have a good evening.